given us trillions of dollars of additional debt. And so tomorrow they propose to freeze in some additional provisions that will add hundreds of billions of additional debt to what they've already incurred. They would depart for the elections, carefully timed with tomorrow's debate, so that the last thing the voter hears is that the Republicans have passed another tax bill. Of course, almost none of its provisions will affect any American for 7 years. That's what they have to offer us. Freeze in some inefficient provisions that are not really targeted to ordinary American families, that have a special provision in there specifically for Donald Trump and other real estate magnates, a provision they hid and tucked in the conference committee and then put in the final law. One special interest provision after another. They want to freeze all that in and offer the American people the mirage of relief in 7 years. This bill that they signed into law as their big tax deal will cost this generation and future generations a huge amount of money, and just paying the interest on the debt that they have achieved. And having done nothing in this Congress to advance retirement security, having done nothing in this Congress to encourage more savings by more Americans, they come here on the eve of our departure for the elections with this big family savings account bill. It also proposes to borrow more. It has a great new universal savings account in it. The only problem is that 2/3 of Americans won't take advantage of this universal savings account because it offers them no advantage whatsoever. They have, as usual, those Americans have been excluded from the Republican vision of what a universe of Americans really is. And the cost of doing this is not only in terms of new debt, but a very inefficient approach where you pay, as indicated by the study of a similar program, you have $1 lost, $1 cost in this borrowing, and you get 1 penny of additional real savings. Now, I've been amused a little bit to hear my colleagues come and agree with me about the challenge that American families face at not having $400 to meet an emergency medical expense. How in the world are any of those Americans going to benefit in the slightest from this proposal? It advantages people who have $100,000 or more with a universal savings account. They're not in that category. If they can't afford a $400 medical expense, exactly how much savings do you expect them to have under this bill? A big zero is what we're talking about. And it's a big zero in large measure because despite this great tax bill they approved, real wages in America have remained stagnant during the Trump administration. He has not been able to raise real wages because he continues to engage in supporting programs just like the one before us today that are aimed at those at the top and think somehow the benefits will trickle down to everyone else. It is those people who will not benefit from today's legislation, who are excluded from the great universe that Republicans see. It is those people who rely on Social Security and Medicare, which Republicans have proposed changes in their budget proposals, have discussed a variety of ways to trim them that we can't afford them in their current form. Well, what precisely have Republicans accomplished about Medicare in this Congress? Well, they have a rather significant accomplishment, I have to note. As a result of their tax bill, they have reduced the solvency of the Medicare Trust Fund by 3 years. 3 years taken right off the Medicare Trust Fund's future as a result of their tax bill by a variety of independent sources that have evaluated the impact. And meanwhile, they are using that tax bill and the debt they've accumulated with reference to the amount of money that we have for Pell Grants and other student financial assistance, for Medicaid and the role that it plays, and for other vital services, saying we just can't afford them because we borrowed these trillions of dollars from abroad and we don't have the resources to meet our other needs. With every tax policy that they propose, Republicans seem to insist on leaving working families behind. And they have the gall then to turn around and tell those same working families, you have to pay for it in interest and in cuts to Medicare and Medicaid and other services. Now, there is another really important point about this which Mr. Kind addressed. Because just like the bill we will take up tomorrow, just like the bill we are taking up right now, just like this huge Republican tax sham, there's much in common. Number one thing in common, not one official in any of the departments in the Trump administration had the guts to come over and face our committee and answer questions about it. They did not bring a single Trump administration official to discuss, explain, justify, see how any of this conforms with all of his ridiculous campaign promises. None of that on any of these bills. And they kept their bills in secret until the last minute after having no public hearings, inviting no businesses, no academic experts from around the country. They plopped these bills out and rushed them through just as quickly as possible so there'll be as little consideration as possible. And then they talk about the desire for bipartisan comedy after doing this kind of thing. Well, there are many bipartisan ideas out there that could have been considered. Mr. Kind's proposal that is designed to help poor people, working people, save for college retirement and give them some incentive for that. That's an idea that could have been considered. Mr. Neal, the ranking member of our committee, has advanced some other important ideas concerning savings, to expand the saver's credit that would help many of these working families get the savings that they need to prepare for their golden years. Mr. Larson, another member of our committee, has worked on cutting taxes for many people under Social Security with modest incomes and seeing that those who have been more successful pay the same rate on all their income that those who are not at the top of the economic ladder pay on theirs. He has a plan to ensure that Social Security will be solvent through the end of this century. Those are the kind of creative proposals that we've advanced, but we can't get a hearing on them. We can't get an opportunity under today's bills or any of these others to offer an amendment to add them. The only way we're going to have an opportunity to address those creative proposals and do something for a universe that we define as including all Americans, not just to those perched up comfortably on the top of the economic ladder. The only way we'll do that is with a new Congress of caring, concerned people that are willing to listen, regardless of whether they agree to divergent views, and try to come up with a truly American answer to resolve this retirement security problem. I believe that those Americans who are working out there today, trying to make ends meet, who won't benefit from this bill, are worried about the tax breaks that have gone to those up at the top, how they will threaten all that they've worked and paid for and their future, and the callous indifference it shows to their children and their grandchildren who will be saddled with this Republican debt for decades. The late Texas Senator Ralph Yarbrough, a distinguished servant of our state, Ralph Yarbrough used to talk about putting the jam on the lower shelf so everybody can reach it. Well, this bill puts the jam at the top for the 1/3 of Americans up there at the top who might use some portion of this bill, but it leaves out the 2/3 that can't reach quite that high. This bill is not what America needs to achieve retirement savings. In so many ways, Republicans are ignoring the needs of working families. They're ignoring prescription price gouging, doing nothing about it. They're ignoring our health care needs. In fact, their tax bill actually weakens significantly access to health care and jeopardizes Americans with higher premiums as a result of a health care provision that they snuck into their tax bill. They show no concern for a living wage for Americans. This bill is just part of that same narrow-mindedness, that same refusal to look at a universe that applies to all Americans. They are leaving families that are struggling to make ends meet behind. They're certainly not letting them reach the jam that they deserve to be able to access, as Senator Yarbrough talked about. Let's reject this bill and look forward to a day, a very hopeful day for Americans, in which all Americans can have their say and we can get a Congress that will resist the injustices of the Trump administration and will reach out to support a better future for our country. And with that, I yield back and urge the rejection of this bill, and I would close at this time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I'd like to submit for the record